Captain Serenity, Tom F. Recovery Sayings, Part 2. You have a right to be right, and you have a right to be wrong, and I don't need to correct you. In the Big Book, page 86 helps us deal with evening, morning, daytimes. My sponsor suggested reading the Big Book daily, pages 20 and 86. You can do the program the hard way or the easy way. It's up to us. When there is a list of things I need to do or want to do, I write them down, and the first thing I don't want to do, I do that first and get it out of the way. If I think about it, I will find a way of getting out of it. If I do it first and get it out of the way, then it's finished. I can act myself into good thinking, but not think my way into good acting. There is no cure for our disease, just a daily reprieve, one day at a time. My sponsor suggested do something for someone else and not be found out. None of us like taking directions. The steps are directions. The Big Book is taking directions. Sponsors suggest directions towards recovery. Following directions has helped me feel more comfortable with myself, change my attitude and actions. I was willing to follow directions because I had the gift of desperation. I was taught by my sponsor that there is no problem in judging others. Just don't tell them. We're not terminally unique, although we sometimes think so. Carry the message, not the sponsee. In sharing at a meeting, we all know what didn't work. It might be more helpful if we hear what does work. It was suggested that it was a good idea to always thank the speaker at the meeting before personally sharing. It doesn't matter how much time we have, but what actions we choose to take and what lessons we practice. Be grateful for the little things we have. Honesty. I learned in program that honesty means self-honesty, that I don't need to be honest with everyone. I can choose to be honest at times with people, but I need to be rigorously honest with myself, God, and my sponsor. My sponsor shared with me that honesty without love is brutality. Often I need to pray and talk to my sponsor before being honest with someone, because I'm not always sure my motives for being honest. An amends isn't an apology. It is a complete change. Dear God, help me to be rigorously honest with how I'm feeling or thinking. Fear is defined in program as fear of giving something up I have or not getting something that I want. Being humble isn't looking at the ground and shuffling my feet. It's making myself second and making God or the program first. I started working on a project. I'm doing it a little at a time, then it will all get done. I heard in the program, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I can do projects that same way also. If God wanted us to be perfect, He wouldn't have put erasers on the end of pencils. My sponsor shared with me if I have a problem and wasn't able to discuss it with my sponsor, I can share it in a meeting a little about the problem and ask if anyone in the meeting has any experience, strength, and hope in this area using program. This also carries the recovery message. When I speak at a meeting, I always say a prayer. Dear God, help me to say something that would be of value to at least one person. What I learned is of little value. What actions I take is more helpful. My sponsor shared, I'm not a historian. I need to know what you're going to do, not what you've done to share experience, strength, and hope. God might be able to share a different way of looking or dealing with things. Feels aren't facts, they're indicators. I'm in the action business, not the results business. Program is for the people who want it, not people who need it. I learned not to try from my sponsor. Try means failure. Try to pay your bills, they probably won't be paid. But change try to make an effort. That indicates action for me. Egad, what a win. When I'm justifying, explaining or rationalizing an action, it is usually the wrong action. I need to run it by my sponsor or someone in the program. God answers our prayers three ways. Number one, yes. Number two, not now. And number three, I've got something better for you down the road. It was suggested that when I take my first candle for abstinence, it is for me and all the rest of the newcomers. When I get a candle for 2 or more years, invite a newcomer to join you to share your candle. When I ask why I'm trying to control something I don't feel I have control over. Listening to someone who is having a problem, bad day, isn't easy. It can mean just listening and not giving advice or sharing your own experience. After someone talks things out, you might ask, do you need or want any experience, strength, and hope from me? Willingness is doing what your sponsor suggests, whether you want to or not. My job as a sponsor is to take people through the 12 steps so they can take others through the 12 steps, so they can find their own higher power. A sponsor is not a historian. I need to share what I'm about to do so my sponsor can share a different way of dealing with a situation or event, thinking differently about it. My sponsor suggested in a 5th step, with our sponsor looking at the 4th column, looking for our mistakes, not what I did wrong. The big book actually says we look for our mistakes, not what was our part. We're not looking for reasons to beat ourselves up, but to realize where we were and if we still wanted to stay there. We're not looking for reasons to beat ourselves up, but realize that where we were and if we still wanted to stay there. Or ask God to help move us forward, letting God remove our character defects in His own time. Our part is practicing the exact opposite of our character defects and asking God to remove them. My sponsor asked me to take my big book to every meeting and listen for one good idea and write it down in my big book. I asked him the reason, and he said, if you're like me, I'll hear one good idea, then I'll hear another good idea, and forget the first idea. He said, recovery comes from what I practice, not what I learn. Recovery comes from what I practice, not what I learn. My sponsor shared with me, if I stand for nothing, I will fall for anything. We're not responsible for our first thought, but we are responsible for spending more time with it. Do the footwork and stay out of the results. I suggested a way of sponsoring is helping someone work the 12 steps and help the person seeing situations from a different perspective. Where there's confusion, it often means clarity is around the corner. From every speaker, we can learn two things: what to do and what not to do. I don't have to ask everything I want, but I have plenty of what I need. I asked my sponsor, how long do I have to work the step? He said, until the step works you. My sponsor suggested taking my big book with me to every meeting and listening for one good idea and write it in my book. Then take an effort to practice what I heard. Recovery comes from what I do, not what I learn or study. What is the difference between into action versus into activity? Action means doing something for myself and others. Into activity means doing anything to run away from myself. The two most important words are, so what? How important is it? If you want a better life, be around people who want a better life. A smart person learns from their own mistakes. A wise person learns from others' mistakes. A good question to ask is, what did I do right today, and what could I have done differently? In working step 9, if I can't find the person, place, or thing to make amends, my sponsor suggested that I treat people in my life better. My sponsor said, if you thought of it, do the opposite. The main problem, oops, I lost my page. The main problem, the compulsive overeater centers in his mind rather than in his body. Page 23 from the big book.